There's 1.3 billion people in China. I think 1 billion of them have used Alibaba. You know, you look at a company like that in the United States, that company would be worth what Amazon's worth. But it is answering, it's not answering to shareholders anymore, it's answering to another power. There's a million reasons why things don't happen in China, and we probably don't know 99% of those reasons. Well, I mean, you know, it's still the Forbidden Kingdom.
There is a world made up of numbers. A world where you have to be the smartest or the fastest. A world connected by radio waves and fiber optic cables. A world where you can make money if you think you know what the future holds. A world of fear and desire, where you can win or lose. I call this world Planet Finance. Wandering around Planet Finance, I arrive at the most renowned of all financial markets, the stock market, in a place where you wouldn't immediately expect it. Here in Shanghai, on Friday nights, you can see a lot of online stock trading going on. The edge of the central People's Square turns into a trading floor. Everyone can share in the profits. In a country that calls itself communist, but that also seems very capitalist to me. China has opened its doors wide to Planet Finance, as if the country has overcome its fear of capital flowing freely around the world. But now that the country is a contender to become one of the world's largest economies, I wonder who is going to set the rules of the game? China or Planet Finance?
The capitalism, the way we have it structured, works for us, whereas China, they're thinking more on the whole as opposed to the individual. Anybody could learn from that. I'm not sure if I believe in any of the other stuff that goes on in China, but I think that believing in the whole and making sure the whole works is, you know, as far as business, I think that's a good model.
For years, Wall Street has been giving China plenty of room to make money on the international capital market. In recent years, the most valuable newcomers have mainly been Chinese. A good example is the large e-commerce company Alibaba, founded by the well-known Chinese entrepreneur Jack Ma. In 2014, he decides to list Alibaba, not in China, but on Wall Street. At the time of Alibaba's IPO, this trader was on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange as a direct eyewitness to this historic moment.
For Jack Ma, bringing it to the United States was very important. Knowing that the coverage he would get, the brand exposure, there was a lot of things going into it. But at the end of the day, I kind of think it was about ego too. I mean, it's very impressive to list your company, you know, build a company from scratch, you know, with 15 of your friends, and next thing you know, you're listing on the New York Stock Exchange.
you want your company to grow, you go looking for capital. You can sell small portions of your company on the stock market. These shares can then be traded. The greater the demand, the higher the price.
I'd never heard of the company, and a friend of mine who worked on the trading floor said, this is awesome because
Alibaba is the most exciting company come across in our careers.
everyone's looking at it and say, well, this is the same thing as Amazon because it's a very similar business model. And the investors are jumping over each other because they feel this is their chance to invest in the Chinese miracle.
In 2014, Western investors, such as our pension funds, are licking their lips at Alibaba's IPO and the company's potential for growth.
Just to begin, we have probably about 350 reporters outside. They may be yelling, they may be screaming. This is just part of it.
Jack will ring the bell, and then
The first day is where all the action is, and people were jumping over each other to try to get shares.
It's the largest IPO in history.
Certainly this is a big deal. This is a global deal.
This is by far the biggest IPO event extravaganza that we've had down here, I would say, probably since I've been down here.
It's basically the purest example of a functioning market. It has supply, has demand, supply meets demand, demand meets supply, and that's all it is. It's stressful in the fact that you got to be there, you got to listen, and there's the craziness of an IPO. Meanwhile, I have Jack Ma, and I started talking to him. I congratulated him and everything, and he was, talking. He goes, "This is so exciting." He was thrilled. And I told him, I said, "Well, let me show you what I'm doing on my handheld, so this way you have an idea." And I had like maybe 4.5 million shares to sell and maybe 2 million to buy. And I said, these are the smart guys. So I made him feel good, all the buyers. The black are those smart guys, and the guys in red, they're not so smart. He was dying laughing.
Of course, Jack Ma is laughing. The demand is much, much higher than the supply. And so, on the day of the IPO, the Alibaba share price immediately goes up.
Opens at 92.70.
But not all the shares are put up for sale. A large portion remains under the ownership of Jack Ma and a select group of early investors. They hit the jackpot that day.
He became, on paper, everything is on paper. No matter what, any gain is on paper until you sell it. But I believe it was $15 or $18 billion. Billion, yeah. So, I could be 100% wrong about that. You could look it up, but I think it was roughly about $15 or $18 billion, give or take $1 billion. So he was a very happy man.
That makes Alibaba's IPO the biggest one ever. The dollars flow into China, and the doors are open wide for Planet Finance. Fast forward 6 years, Jack Ma is the richest entrepreneur in China, but he still can't resist the urge to score it big again. Now he wants to take his fintech company, Ant Group, public. But this time, he doesn't choose New York.
我也很自豪地跟大家宣布，昨天晚上就在上海，我们决定了蚂蚁金服的上市的定价。这么大一次全人类有史以来最大的上市，在纽约城以外定价，这是第一次。在5年前，这个3年前，我们想都不敢想，但是奇迹就这么在发生。
Ant Group's IPO should have been the biggest one ever again. But things didn't work out as planned. To understand how the IPO put the relationship between China and Planet Finance on edge, I'm taking you to Hong Kong. For a long time, this was Asia's main financial centre and an outpost of Western capital. And this time again, Western investors are first in line for Ant Group's IPO. Because in China, The entire country has become dependent on the financial super app Alipay, developed by Ant Group.
Ik heb de Alipay Hong Kong app ook op mijn telefoon zitten. Het is natuurlijk in China begonnen dat mensen eigenlijk gewoon geen portemonnee meer bij zich hadden, maar alles met hun telefoon betaalden. En dat is grotendeels door Ant afgedwongen.
Amy shows her unique Alipay code and has it scanned. Done.
Dat ze dus het zo makkelijk hebben gemaakt voor kleine ondernemers in China om met een barcode te kunnen betalen, dat ze daarmee een enorme marktpositie hebben gekregen. Nou ja, en daarna is dat in een stroomversnelling geraakt, dat ze dus rondom die app Alipay allerlei producten beginnen aan te bieden.
There are so many other functions to explore.
Because with this app, you can make payments, but also take out a loan or insurance, save money, and even trade. A super app that Western tech companies can only dream of.
700 miljoen mensen hebben die app wel op hun telefoon staan, denk ik.
This fund manager clearly sees the potential of the IPO as well. As always, he is looking for returns, also on our pension money. So he is assessing at what price he would want to get on board.
Extremely sensational.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for that, and let's make lots of money.
Arnout van Rijn has worked in Hong Kong for years and shares his considerations with me in the run-up to the IPO. And due to the pandemic, he does so at a distance.
Het bedrijf gaat normaal gesproken op roadshow langs bij alle grote klanten. Er wordt nog een laatste rondje vragen beantwoord. Er wordt een grote lunch georganiseerd. En dan wordt er nog eens mensen wat enthousiast gemaakt. De kranten gaan er allemaal over schrijven. Zeker in Hongkong is dat echt dan dagenlang voorpagina nieuws. En dan begint de boekbuilding. En dat duurt meestal een week ongeveer. Dat mensen dus hun beslissing nemen over wel dan niet meedoen en voor hoeveel.
I hope it's more than 200 billion actually. It is, I think.
Ja, dat betekent dus dat wij in principe erg geïnteresseerd zijn in zo'n IPO om daar aan mee te doen. Maar ja, meer kan ik daar natuurlijk niet over zeggen, want dat worden dan echt interne discussies.
But there is no Planet Finance without small investors. Even this taxi driver wants to get a piece of the pie.
而家都真係好靜啊！以前嚟計咧，即係唔係疫情嚟計咧，2、3點都好多人嘅。的士就平均，如果係即係以前嚟計咧，大約係800蚊到啦。而家應該係500、600蚊到啦。而家應該。咁係如果當然係覺得自己嗰個財富仲未曾足夠支持到自己嘅退休生活啦，所以先至會去炒股票咯，嚇。
By buying shares in Ant Group, our taxi driver gets himself a wafer-thin slice of the pie as a co-owner of the company. And with a little bit of luck, the IPO is such a big success that he can make a huge profit.
股票唔係一定賺好多㗎，有時蝕㗎，有時會蝕嘅，都係睇個時勢嚟定嘅啫。嚇，不過如果一討嗰陣時咧，一係揾2萬啊、2、3萬都得嘅咁樣。IPO 嚟計咧，我就發覺咧就即係經驗嚟計就多數都賺嘅，即係多數都賺嘅。
In order to even qualify for Ant Group shares, everyone has to sign up through a special app 9 days before the IPO.
通常係9點半開始嘅，咁樣所以咪早啲起身咯嚇。平時都冇咁早起身嘅，平時都係12點到啦咁多嚇。因為相信會比較hot 嘅，所以就好多人都第一時間就會入嘅嚇，所以就要等緊嚟㗎。再幾秒鐘可以開始撳啦。IPO 唔係實賺嘅，但係由於比較即係聞名啲嘅 IPO 咧，賺嘅機會會大啲嘅。夠鐘啦，可以我試下撳唔撳到啊嚇？可以撳咗啦，睇下得唔得啊？佢 busy 啊，太過 busy 啊，因為入唔到去，要 try later 啦。
Het is dus zo'n populaire IPO, in China ook. Hè? Want vergeet niet, deze IPO gaat tegelijkertijd in Hongkong naar de beurs, maar ook in de starrenmarkt in Shanghai.
A dual listing? That doesn't happen very often. In Shanghai and at the same time in Hong Kong. Why does Jack Ma want to do this?
De meeste internetbedrijven van China zijn niet genoteerd in China. Dus Alibaba, Tencent en JD zijn allemaal op offshore beurzen genoteerd. Dus veel Chinese beleggers hebben maar een beperkte mogelijkheid om in dat soort succesverhalen te beleggen. Dus die zijn super geïnteresseerd.
Jack Ma wants to butter his bread on both sides, because China has built a virtual wall between mainland China and the rest of the world. This wall is supposed to protect the Chinese market from outside influences, but it mainly has to make sure that Chinese capital stays within the nation's borders. In Hong Kong, Jack Ma can rake in international capital, and in Shanghai, he gains access to the piggy banks of the new Chinese middle class. By day, these new investors are shown their way around Planet Finance by this wealth manager. But at night, he becomes a so-called finfluencer. Through his TikTok account, Liu Ping keeps his millions of followers informed of the market's ups and downs, and I can join him for a session.
晚上好，厚德同学，我去，就你们有问题尽管问啊。新粉同学啊，这个热烈欢迎来加入柳叔。来，我柳叔先喝口羊肉汤。但是我会为这只羊祈祷一下的，希望它能度过一个安详的这个另外的喵声。尤里同学，你这个很明显这是个新粉啊。然后第二个就说，你觉得第一天蚂蚁的股票会涨多少？刚才也讲了，我觉得蚂蚁股票可以涨个70-80啊。王博士他认为是差不多涨50%啊，但肯定会涨啊。然后在香港买蚂蚁好，还是在上海买蚂蚁好啊？我觉得，怎么说呢？就是哪边便宜在哪边买就比较好啊。好，挂了啊，同学们，拜拜。
Liu Ping himself is also part of this new Chinese middle class. He earned an opportunity to study in Canada and now has a good job at a large asset management firm. But to get there, he had to come a long way.
小时候其实还是很穷的，超级穷。在前面呢，吃饭就仅仅能够维持吃饭，稍微有一点点那个积蓄呢，就基本上就用于买一点，逢年过节的时候买点肉啊什么的。其实是我自己发明创造的一个，就是通常的那种工薪家庭他怎么去做投资理财的一个指导思想。然后当时最早呢是我爸爸管钱，我爸爸管钱呢，因为他大手大脚，然后当然这个家里的那个核心的收入也是他在创造，但是呢，因为他就是自己也没有太好的那个管理的那个方式嘛，所以有时候经常就拿这个钱去赌博呀。或者说是去买东西啊。南无地藏菩萨摩诃萨，南无地藏菩萨摩诃萨，南无地藏菩萨摩诃萨，南无地藏菩萨摩诃萨，南无地藏菩萨摩诃萨，南无地藏菩萨摩诃萨，南无地藏菩萨摩诃萨。
For Liu Ping, it must be a huge contrast from where he came from to where he is today.
我看一下我现在那个账户挣回多少钱。30多万，怎么样？要不要搬个20万进来？
不要让，还是尽量少放一点钱嘛。那回头我考虑一下给你吧。
The company our wealth manager works for helps the Chinese newly rich to become even richer. Although the financial industry is still in its infancy, investing is popular in China. 7% of the population invests, and each month they are joined by millions more. The date of Ant Group's IPO is approaching, and Liu Ping and his colleague are not only charting the possibilities within the Chinese money wall, but also those beyond. Because in the end, Chinese money will also flow wherever it wants to go.
再讲一下那个，讲一下那个港股的那个。
港股你作为资产配置的一部分，其实还是很有必要的。尤其是你如果对海外资产有兴趣的话，香港一定是第一站。也就是说，是从向外一个窗口，更多的慢慢的就变成了一个回归祖国大陆的怀抱。
While in Hong Kong, it is getting harder and harder to speak freely, Jack Ma addresses the Chinese financial elite. It's this speech that will lead to his downfall soon after.
坦白来说，我很纠结。大银行，中国有很多大银行，更像是大江大河和血液的动脉。但是我们今天更需要湖泊，需要水塘，需要小溪小河，需要各种各样的沼泽地。缺少了这些生态系统，我们才会涝的时候涝死，旱的时候旱死。所以，今天我们国家是缺乏健康金融系统的风险。
His words about the failing government reverberate strongly. Jack Ma says things that hardly anyone dares to say in public. He claims Beijing is holding back the growth of a healthy financial market, and he emphasizes the need to embrace innovation. I wonder if Beijing's policies are also felt on Planet Finance. Our fund manager in Hong Kong seems a little nervous about it.
Now, over the last year or so, things have intensified quite a bit with the introduction of the national security law. You can really see that things are changing, and people are doing a lot of self-censorship in what they say. So that's really different now. But for the rest of Hong Kong, like I said, as a financial center, it's still very much alive and vibrant. But for people that don't like China, it's becoming more and more difficult.
In Hong Kong, the freedom of Planet Finance seems unhampered for now.
Ja, Hongkong is echt, daarom ben ik hier ook gaan wonen. Want het is gewoon een land waarin de aandelenmarkt echt wel een belangrijke rol speelt. Het is echt gewoon een publieke functie. We zijn heel erg gewend om in aandelen te beleggen. Weliswaar op een andere manier, met veel meer korte horizon. Mijn buurman heeft dat gisteren gekocht. Ik denk dat dat een hele goede tip is. Maar het is een beetje zoals we hier ook op woensdagavond naar de horse racing zitten te kijken. Heb jij nog een tipje? Ja, dan zit je ook naar aandelen te kijken.
Meanwhile, our taxi driver is eagerly awaiting things to come.
但係你係賭股票就好過你話真係落去賭場度賭，賭場就唔係贏就輸啊嘛。但係如果股票而家你可以即係如果揀隻好嘅股票咧，你可以守下都得，可以有機會回翻本都得。
冇啊！你抽咗啦！佢今日開始抽喎，你有冇入票啊？
我有啊！我一早就9點零鐘就起身去抽啦，抽咗5萬股啊！用孖展抽咗5萬股，孖展抽咗5萬股。
哇！好似食好啊！咁好嘢都咁俾你，俾足你啊！
呢個係申請啫，唔係俾你嘅。
Soon, he could become the lucky owner of 50,000 shares of a total 368 million shares that Ant Group will bring onto the market. It still remains to be seen whether he will actually get these shares, because he's not the only one. In Hong Kong, 1 out of 5 inhabitants sign up for Ant Group's IPO. And for small investors, the only way to do that is through a so-called broker.
其實我哋耀才嘅角色咧，咪好似呢個 book 為主咯，即係可能因為有好多客戶咧需要認購，咁佢必須喺我哋有個戶口，而我哋咧就會以 係有兩種方式啦，一個現金認購，或者亦都用孖展認購去幫客戶認購咯。咁全部因為今次螞蟻咧就係一個 IPO 啊，即係我哋叫電子認購。
The broker's clients are at his office, doing trades as if it were a casino. They are speculating to earn as much as 10 cents of profit per share.
我而家睇下佢㗎啦，今朝開始睇下佢。7毫半啊，已經多毫半支喎。
個洋錢又唔冚升成毫子啊，2毫8上去3毫8啊，即係遲發現嘅真係。
With their margin account, these fortune seekers can greatly increase their chances, with all the risks involved.
你當然係話嗱，今次暫緩上市啦，就係現金客戶，即係現金客戶啦，就可能唔會有影響嘅，因為你原銀奉還嘅，即係你認購幾多，我就全部原銀奉還俾你啦。咁如果孖展客戶嚟計咧，就孖展客戶咧，大家都知啊嘛，佢只係付出10% 嘅本金，而另外90% 我哋叫做孖展啊嘛。咁而呢個孖展咧，就基本上咧，我哋嘅做法咧就如果銀行。
So they can sign up for a much higher number of shares than they can afford, which only increases the demand for Ant Group shares. Our taxi driver has also put himself in debt this way. His 50,000 shares amount to €500,000, and all of that only to be able to play the game on Planet Finance.
其中公開招股部分只係佔總發行股數2.5%，其餘近98%係國際配售。
都好犀利嘅，公開發售得2%嘅啫。集資最多1300。即係你根本你公唔公開發售佢都冇關係嘅，大把人要。嗰啲國際配售啊，嚇，所以就算如果你抽到之後咧，都唔使咁，我相信唔需要咁急放。
The hype around the IPO is reaching great heights. In Hong Kong, the demand is now nearly 400 times higher than the number of available shares. So now, the game of supply and demand really starts. Because what will be the price of the share?
Uiteindelijk is dat hele marktmechanisme van ja, wat is iets nou eigenlijk waard? En alle psychologische aspecten die daar ook aan zitten. En die retailbeleggers die misschien helemaal gek worden en veel te hoge prijs voor betalen. Ja, daar wil je op een gegeven moment dan ook in feite juist wel gebruik van kunnen maken. Door te zeggen van ja, dit zijn alleen maar retailers die het op deze prijs kopen, ik ben weg. Dus dat psychologische spel is ook heel leuk om te spelen.
This psychological game is what Planet Finance is crazy about. Because in the end, the value of something is what a fool is willing to pay for it. And that's exactly what Beijing is scared of. After all, in the days of Mao, there simply were no stock markets in the communist country. So for China, joining the game on Planet Finance is a relatively new and, above all, risky endeavour. And given the deep poverty Liu Ping has pulled himself out of, I wonder how he deals with the risk that he, too, could lose everything again.
但是呢，为什么会有这个恐惧？这不是受你的意志存在的，它就是事实就存在这里。我小时候就怕黑，然后呢，我又回想起来，我爸爸妈妈小时候都是那种叫什么叫农村的那种什么，就是那种就是小生产队的那种上工的那种方式。然后呢，我就一个人，我和我弟弟2个人就在家里头，就纯粹就关在小黑屋里面。然后呢，我妈妈为了防止我们去乱跑或者让我们受伤，就给我们放一个桶里面，就放在一个桶，那个桶很高，然后我们就蹲在那个里头，就拉屎拉尿。但是呢，就是寻求等待妈妈的回来，对吧？当我没有意识到看不到这个东西的时候，我只记得当时的感受的时候，我肯定是恐惧。那如果说我知道背后的原因是这样子的情况下，那我看到了相当于说刺激我恐惧的那个原因之后，那我这份恐惧自然就会消失。然后反正现在就没有什么恐惧了。那么在投资里面也有一份恐惧，就是怕担心自己会亏损。
For Beijing, it's harder to deal with the prospect of potential loss. And Jack Ma, after his warning about the power of the Chinese government, he continues his speech by taking things one step further.
中国的金融和其他刚成长起来的发展中国家一样，在金融业我们是青春少年，还没有成熟的生态系统，没有完全的流动起来。中国不是金融系统性风险，因为中国金融基本上没有系统，而是中国是缺乏金融系统的风险。
The laughter of the Chinese financial in-crowd sounds uncomfortable. And 3 days before the planned IPO, this discomfort reverberates around Shanghai's business district.
包括这个马云同学最近的大会上那个讲话，
他那个监管对，
又有点这种魂不吝的味道啊，所以确实是让监管层是比较担心的，因为一旦出事，其实这个时候就是全民买单。蚂蚁最大的问题是垄断，而且垄断呢是一个很敏感的领域，是金融领域。加上垄断这个事情，一旦出岔子，影响就非常大，因为都知道金融是个高杠杆行业。
它就是体量太大了。
但问题
就是
真正问题就在这，目前来看一切都好，不管是腾讯也好，还是阿里也好，都是民营资本。
好，你这个有点害怕的。
这个一言以蔽之，这个确实是牵涉到。
是。
其实这个我觉得也没那么忌讳。现在舆论现在已经有这种往这种方向走的这种。
肯定不像工行，
对，
肯定不像我们的中国移动，肯定不像这些国营企业里面有一个要求。
对，影响力太高了。
对，是担心它出事。
Our wealth manager and his colleagues are clearly worried. Not only about the tone of Jack Ma's speech, but also about the powerful position of Ant Group.
但核心的能力就在他那里，就是我有多少人来我这里借钱，有多少人会逾期，有多少人会赖账。这些是清清楚楚的，因为它有大数据，所以就变成了它就相当于是一个通道。然后呢，核心能力在它那里，核心能力在它那里的话，它它会变得越来越壮大，越来越壮大。啊，这很可怕的。
But meanwhile, the interest in Ant Group shares only continues to grow. In Shanghai, the demand is now 800 times higher than the supply. And then, 2 days before the long-awaited listing, something happens that nobody could see coming. Beijing slams the emergency brake and pulls the plug on Ant Group's IPO.
The largest initial public offering of all time, not listing here in the United States, but would be listing or was said to be ready to list in Hong Kong and on the relatively new star market in Shanghai. All of that appears this morning to be going up in smoke.
这个 IPO 案它要上市，结果中国的证监会、中国的央行、中国的银保监、马云、井贤栋、胡晓明，也就是蚂蚁金服。
我哋真係好似好耐冇聽過有上市，上唔到市，臨開波之前嗰2日係嘛，好似冇聽過，所以啲人猛問究竟點啊？
好突然啦，同埋即係覺得即係好似冇乜可能咁樣喎，真係嚇咁大隻嘅 IPO， 全世界最大嘅 IPO 突然之間停咧，就即係對中國嗰個聲譽啊都有啲影響嘅，都會有影響。
就廣為人知，喺馬雲等人咧被約談之後咧，網友以馬已經服、馬已金服、馬已經服經係北京嘅經啊等諧音咧去調山呢個。
咁就變咗就冇機會再申請到呢隻股咯嚇。 咁啊，梗有少少失望嘅，因為正常嚟計，如果琴日咁計啦，即係話估計佢會升50%㗎嘛。要都講明啦，就孖展利息咧就恐無法退回啦咁樣，可以講得上係未曾開始已經係輸咗錢㗎啦已經。呢個係，但係最主要睇睇嗰個中國嗰個即係講出嚟點解，即係點解停止咗呢個 IPO 先知啦。呢樣我都真係唔知喎，真係
我这里可以告诉你的是呢，暂缓的决定呢是有关证券交易部门履行自律监管责任的体现。
The regulator speaks with restraint. Never before was such a large IPO called off at such a late stage in the process. And this completely unexpected move by Beijing leaves Planet Finance speechless.
但係琴晚突然間7點零鐘中證8點零鐘中證啱公佈，而9點零鐘香港交易所亦都公佈埋，全部停晒。咁我自己覺得由天堂跌到落谷底咯。唉，咁所以一言難盡咯。今次嘅事件真係講真一言難盡，真係好無奈啊！真係笑得。
所以依家最簡單嘅就聽朝啊，你聽朝佢可望今日張單。
咁我都未講啊！我一推門入去，佢見到我已經好激動。喂，我搞錯啊！點賠翻俾我？我賠俾你咩，大佬？我都係今朝食咗你貓啊！
Our broker also thought he hit the jackpot with his commission on all those transactions.
但係呢一次就一個世紀嘅招股而出現到，我哋叫胎死腹中，做到㗎。就係締造一個全行嘅歷史，但係呢個歷史5日後，原來呢個歷史係個泡影。咁你諗下，我哋無奈到無奈啦，真係㗎，講真，係啊。
Als u zegt van had je het zien aankomen. Maar ja, het businessmodel was gewoon super degelijk en dus ook super winstgevend. Kun je echt geen gat inschieten. Ze krijgen de fee binnen en ze hoeven geen enkel risico te nemen. De banken nemen alle risico op de boeken en die staan een deel van hun fee af. Het is gewoon, ja, je duwt je er als middelman tussen met een appje en daar ga je gewoon miljarden mee verdienen. Het is te mooi om waar te zijn.
If something seems too good to be true, it usually is too good to be true, especially on Planet Finance. Meanwhile, in Shanghai, our wealth manager obviously has heard the news of the cancelled IPO. He has been busy with his TikTok channel all night because everyone wants to know why those mountains of gold they were promised have now vanished into thin air. And he tried his very best to answer that question.
哎，这怎么算呢？26。这个多少钱？46。
啊，快8块钱，另外2块。
哦，我的天哪！
But to actually share his insights with his followers proves to be a not so easy task.
我靠，昨天就睡了2个小时。
就睡2个小时？
我昨天就睡了2个小时。
你现在困吗？
我现在好困啊！那个，为什么呢？这2天事情实在太多了，就是一看到新闻，立刻就写了个视频，发出去了。存活时间大概20分钟，
然后呢，被下架了。
被下架了，点赞率超过50%。我前天写的内容呢不太好，就有点调侃监管的，所以昨天呢我写的很客观中立。然后他下架，我就再上传。 他下架，我再上传。我一直搞到了大概将近1点钟，5点多钟的时候，我又做了一个尝试，又发了一遍，这次死得更快，600个播放就直接被下架了。
最后呢，谁赢了？
他赢了，他赢了，还是他赢了，
是吧？
Apparently, TikTok also quickly realized that the cancelled IPO was a sensitive topic.
蚂蚁暂停上市的时候，我看到这个消息是在我的粉丝群里面，他们就是立刻就转过来了，然后说完了，然后呢，想着说啊，原来外滩金融峰会的这个后果这么严重。
不是，中国不是金融系统是风险，因为中国金融基本上没有系统。
当他有这个自信啊，当时有这个自信去尝试，我觉得，啊，当时的年轻人热血沸腾是吧？说哎，终于有人跟监管叫板了，而且你借着自己的影响力去要求监管，我觉得这是非常不妥的，就有点像手里拿个棍子说你答应我吧，哎呀，求求你了，这个，那你手里这根棍子用来干啥呢，对吧？
What Jack Ma was really hoping to achieve with his speech isn't entirely clear to Liu Ping and his colleague.
啊，对，大杯的一个拿铁吧。
帮你确认一下，大杯热拿铁，大杯热巧克力都70元，多少位？
你看到这个新闻，你怎么想的？
看到这新闻，首先肯定很惊讶了，因为这个事情搞大了嘛，哪想到搞这么大？一个是铁板钉钉的事情，对吧？对。那个马云那个炮轰监管层那个讲话，他也不是随机的，就说是兴之所至讲的。
他肯定是
他当时讲的时候，他是有讲稿的。
对啊。
他是对着
准备的，
对着那个讲稿讲的。所以这个现在讲的人也很多啊，反正基本上比较一致的观点就是这样的，就是马云的这个炮轰监管是一次公开的喊话，然后这次公开的喊话得到的回应是出乎他意料的强硬。对，因为你想什么样层级的力量可以同时把四部委对同时丢起来？
进行校验失败，简直就是扑腾一下，然后呢，这个做一个尝试，对吧？
Before the scheduled IPO, Jack Ma was a busy man. The flight data of his private jet show that immediately after his infamous speech in Shanghai, he is being summoned to Beijing. And while all of China is still abuzz with the upcoming IPO, 2 days later, after a short stay in Hangzhou at Ant Group's head office, Jack Ma is again summoned to Beijing. That's when Ant Group's IPO is called off. For 12 long days, his private jet doesn't leave Beijing. Jack Ma seems to have dropped off the radar.
Hey, take it easy, buddy.
I wonder what people on the other side of the ocean think of Jack Ma's disappearance.
Calm down, Stinky.
The only time I've ever seen him is when he finally came out, you know, when wherever he went on vacation. He looked happy, but I didn't hear anything he had to say. I don't think there probably is, you know, it's speeches, because his last speech was very negative as far as the Chinese banking system.
Did you watch it?
I saw parts of it. I didn't see the whole thing.
What do you think of it?
Well, I think he's right. You know, I think he's right, but I don't live in China. You know, I'm free to say what I think about Jack Ma and the Chinese banking system here.
Hey, here you go.
I mean, we don't see everything that goes on in China.
Hey, now. I know.
There's a collar underneath his collar. He has it's a shock thing. It has 2 metal prongs, and if you walk around the property, right on the other side of the fence, there's a little metal wire, and basically, if he goes over that line, it'll like shock him a little bit, And it just reminds him that he's not supposed to go, because he was trained to not go over that, past that spot. The similarity is striking.
但是我们中东还需要湖泊，需要水塘，需要小溪小河，需要各种各样的沼泽地。缺少了这些生态系统，我们老是旱的是旱。所以今天我们国家是缺乏健康金融系统的风险，我们需要。
1 year later, the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party draws near. Besides Ant Group, Beijing has also subjected other Chinese tech companies to stricter rules. And Jack Ma's pride and joy still isn't listed.
蚂蚁上市被否呢？我觉得挺好的，因为蚂蚁停止上市之后，你去看这个中概的这些互联网的企业的，基本上都有一个大幅的下折，大概20-30%是有的，平均啊。是的。就是从蚂蚁停止上市那一年就开始，也就是说资本已经形成了一个共识，就是中国政府，对这种事情是不太认同的。我中国政府这个是全能的党，对吧？
Almighty Beijing clearly doesn't want to leave everything to the power of the market. As a result, the Wall Street share prices of Alibaba and other Chinese tech companies are falling. I wonder why Beijing puts so much pressure on its own large tech companies.
Is op een laat moment bij de Chinese regelgever denk ik ook wel het besef gedaagd van misschien dat dit niet zo goed is voor onze traditionele banken. Als Ant al het geld verdient, maar nooit een slechte lening heeft. Kijk, dat was gewoon de conclusie. En daarom is nu dus het voorstel van laat ze maar 30% van het risico nemen. Dat is ook ongeveer een deel van de fee dat ze naar zich toe halen. Dus ja, het klinkt mij ook heel plausibel om het op die manier te doen.
Apparently Planet Finance understands Beijing.
Ja. Ja, en nogmaals, het was echt een beetje te mooi om waar te zijn. En daarom voor ons als beleggers is het een heel aantrekkelijk bedrijf. En het zal dus nu minder aantrekkelijk zijn.
In the end, our taxi driver gets reimbursed by Ant Group for the interest he paid, but his dream of making a fortune in a single day is gone.
所以就冇再玩嗰啲科技股咯，買翻比較即係有實力啲嘅公用股，即係好似買咗隻八號仔啊，或者買咗隻883啊。
With the benefit of hindsight, I wonder if Jack Ma already suspected that his company's IPO wasn't viable when he gave his speech. Did he realize that his days as a successful entrepreneur were numbered?
坦白来说，我很纠结。陈述讲的不对，贻笑大方，但是也就大家枯竭一听，觉得没道理，忘了就算。
Is that why he overcame his fear of Beijing and dared to say what others can't? But in the light of history, that doesn't matter anymore, because Beijing stays its course and splits Ant Group into different parts. The company has to submit all user data to a state-owned agency and comply with the same strict rules as banks and insurance companies. If there's one thing I've learned from this, is that the cancellation of the IPO was a watershed moment. Perhaps not altogether unexpected, but China itself now determines the rules of the game that's played on Planet Finance. Meanwhile, Beijing forced Jack Ma to give up his control of Ant Group, potentially opening up the possibility to set a new date for an eventual IPO.